Welcome to the brief presentation of ISO 13485 requirements. We are going to discuss clause number 7.5, production and service provision. Production and service provision. Production requirements. Control of production and service provision. Control medical device production and service provision. Plan your production and service provision activities. Carry out production and service provision activities. Monitor production and service provision activities. Control production and service provision activities. Production and service provision shall be planned, carried out, monitored and controlled to ensure that product conforms to specification. As appropriate. Production controls shall include but are not limited to production and service provision shall be planned, carried out, monitored and controlled to ensure that product conforms to specification. As appropriate. Production controls shall include but are not limited to a. Documentation of procedures and methods for the control of production. B. Qualification of infrastructure. C. Implementation of monitoring and measurement of process parameters and product characteristics. D. Availability and use of monitoring and measuring equipment. E. Implementation of defined operations for labeling and packaging. F. Implementation of product release, delivery and post-delivery activities. The organization shall establish and maintain a record for each medical device or batch of medical devices that provides traceability to the extent specified in and identifies the amount manufactured and amount approved for distribution. The record shall be verified and approved. Cleanliness of product. Define requirements for cleanliness or contamination controls. Identify products that you clean prior to sterilization or use. Document and maintain your cleanliness or contamination control requirements for products that you clean prior to sterilization or use. Identify products that cannot be cleaned prior to sterilization or use. Document and maintain your cleanliness or contamination control requirements for products that can't be cleaned prior to sterilization or use. Identify products supplied non-sterile to be cleaned before sterilization or use. Document and maintain cleanliness or contamination control requirements for products supplied non-sterile to be cleaned before sterilization or use. Identify products that must be clean when used but are supplied non-sterile. Document and maintain cleanliness or contamination control requirements for products that must be clean when used but are supplied non-sterile. Identify process agents that must be removed from product during manufacture. Document and maintain cleanliness or contamination control requirements for process agents that must be removed from products during manufacture. The organization shall document requirements for cleanliness of product or contamination control of product if a. Product is cleaned by the organization prior to sterilization or its use. B. Product is supplied non-sterile and is to be subjected to a cleaning process prior to sterilization or its use. C. Product cannot be cleaned prior to sterilization or its use, and its cleanliness is of significance in use. D. Product is supplied to be used non-sterile, and its cleanliness is of significance in use. E. Process agents are to be removed from product during manufacture. If product is cleaned in accordance with A, or B, above, the requirements contained in do not apply prior to the cleaning process. Installation activities. Specify product installation and verification requirements. Establish medical device installation requirements. Document your medical device installation requirements. Establish medical device installation verification requirements. Document your organization's installation verification requirements. The organization shall document requirements for medical device installation and acceptance criteria for verification of installation, as appropriate. If the agreed customer requirements allow installation of the medical device to be performed by an external party other than the organization or its supplier, the organization shall provide documented requirements for medical device installation and verification of installation. Records of medical device installation and verification of installation performed by the organization or its supplier shall be maintained. Servicing activities. Develop servicing procedures and reference materials. Establish medical device servicing procedures and reference materials. Document your medical device servicing procedures and reference materials. Use your procedures and materials to control medical device servicing activities. Maintain a record of your organization's medical device servicing activities. Identify improvement opportunities and servicing complaints. If servicing of the medical device is a specified requirement, the organization shall document servicing procedures, reference materials, and reference measurements, as necessary, for performing servicing activities and verifying that product requirements are met. The organization shall analyze records of servicing activities carried out by the organization or its supplier. A. To determine if the information is to be handled as a complaint. B. As appropriate, for input to the improvement process. Records of servicing activities carried out by the organization or its supplier shall be maintained. Particular requirements for sterile medical devices. Maintain a record of sterilization process parameters. Establish a record of your organization's sterilization process parameters. Record sterilization process parameters for each batch of medical devices. The organization shall maintain records of the sterilization process parameters used for each sterilization batch. Sterilization records shall be traceable to each production batch of medical devices. Validation of processes for production and service provision. Validate processes used for production and service provision. Identify processes that generate outputs that are not or cannot be verified by subsequent monitoring and measurement until it's too late. Establish procedures to validate production and service delivery processes and software applications that could affect your products and services. Validate processes and software applications that could generate output deficiencies and could affect your products and services. The organization shall validate any processes for production and service provision where the resulting output cannot be or is not verified by subsequent monitoring or measurement and, as a consequence, deficiencies become apparent only after the product is in use or the service has been delivered. Validation shall demonstrate the ability of these processes to achieve planned results consistently. The organization shall document procedures for validation of processes, including a. Defined criteria for review and approval of the processes. B. Equipment qualification and qualification of personnel. C. use of specific methods, procedures and acceptance criteria. D. As appropriate. Statistical techniques with rationale for sample sizes. E. Requirements for records. F. Revalidation, including criteria for revalidation. G. Approval of changes to the processes. The organization shall document procedures for the validation of the application of computer software used in production and service provision. Such software applications shall be validated prior to initial use and, as appropriate, after changes to such software or its application. The specific approach and activities associated with software validation and revalidation shall be proportionate to the risk associated with the use of the software, including the effect on the ability of the product to conform to specifications. Records of the results and conclusion of validation and necessary actions from the validation shall be maintained. Particular requirements for validation of processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Validate processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Document procedures used to validate processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Establish procedures used to validate processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Implement procedures used to validate processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Maintain procedures used to validate processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. The organization shall document procedures for the validation of processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems. Processes for sterilization and sterile barrier systems shall be validated prior to implementation and following product or process changes, as appropriate. Records of the results and conclusion of validation and necessary actions from the validation shall be maintained. The standard additionally says that further information can be found in ISO 11607-1 and ISO 11607-2. Identification. Preserve product identity throughout product realization. Prepare procedures and systems to control the identity of medical devices. Document your organization's product identification systems and procedures. Implement your organization's product identification systems and procedures. The organization shall document procedures for product identification and identify product by suitable means throughout product realization. The organization shall identify product status with respect to monitoring and measurement requirements throughout product realization. Identification of product status shall be maintained throughout production, storage, installation and servicing of product to ensure that only product that has passed the required inspections and tests or released under an authorized concession is dispatched, used or installed. If required by applicable regulatory requirements, the organization shall document a system to assign unique device identification to the medical device. The organization shall document procedures to ensure that medical devices returned to the organization are identified and distinguished from conforming product. Traceability. Establish suitable traceability procedures and records. Establish suitable product traceability procedures. Establish your product traceability procedures. Implement your product traceability procedures. Maintain your product traceability procedures. The organization shall document procedures for traceability. These procedures shall define the extent of traceability in accordance with applicable regulatory requirements and the records to be maintained. Particular requirements for implantable medical devices. Establish suitable records for implantable devices. Establish your traceability records for implantable medical devices. Expect suppliers of distribution services to have distribution records. The records required for traceability shall include records of components, materials, and conditions for the work environment used. If these could cause the medical device not to satisfy its specified safety and performance requirements. Records of the name and address of the shipping package consignee shall be maintained. Customer property. Protect property supplied for medical devices by customers. Identify property supplied by customers to be used by medical devices. Verify property supplied by customers to be used by your medical devices. Safeguard property supplied by customers to be used by medical devices. Maintain a record of customer property that is lost, damaged, or unsuitable. Report lost, damaged, or unsuitable customer property to your customers. The organization shall identify, verify, protect, and safeguard customer property provided for use or incorporation into the product while it is under the organization's control or being used by the organization. If any customer property is lost, damaged or otherwise found to be unsuitable for use, the organization shall report this to the customer and maintain records. Preservation of product. Preserve medical device products and components. Establish procedures to preserve the conformity of products. Document and maintain your product preservation procedures. Use your procedures to preserve the conformity of products. Prevent medical device damage, alteration, and contamination. Protect products when exposed to hazards and expected conditions. The organization shall document procedures for preserving the conformity of product to requirements during processing, storage, handling, and distribution. Preservation shall apply to the constituent parts of a medical device. The organization shall protect product from alteration, contamination or damage when exposed to expected conditions and hazards during processing, storage, handling, and distribution by a. Designing and constructing suitable packaging and shipping containers. b. Documenting requirements for special conditions needed if packaging alone cannot provide preservation. If special conditions are required, they shall be controlled and recorded. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Please give us your suggestions and feedback by an email.